Meanwhile, the House Oversight Committee will be voting, I believe, at about 2 o'clock today on contempt charges against Bill Barr and Wilbur Ross. In short, the issue here is, how did a question about citizenship end up in the 2020 census? And we have never had one in the history of this country. The census calls for the measurement of all peoples in the United States. This is a constitutional requirement, not citizens. The citizenship question was inserted between the DOJ and Commerce Department. It's actually in front of the Supreme Court right now. The argument that the DOJ said was, we needed this to enforce the Voting Rights Act. In certain districts, we needed to make sure that there was enough minority representation in elected offices. Now, the Voting Rights Act has been in effect for over 50 years. The DOJ has never needed this information. And this case went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is deliberating on it. 1 week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, it was revealed that it's been found on a dead Republican operative's computer by his daughter, that he had drawn up extensive plans for this question and actually had done models, statistical models, how this plan, if this question was asked on the census, how would it impact voting patterns in Texas? How would it, who would it favor? They found, I'm paraphrasing, but I think it's actually a direct quote, it will help non-Hispanic whites and Republicans gain more electoral power in Texas. Then this same guy drafted letters that were used verbatim by the DOJ to send to Commerce for this request. So the House Oversight Committee is looking for information between these two, and Donald Trump has now claimed executive privilege. Why the White House would have anything to do with this at all is beyond me. Well, it's not. I understand why they would do this, but their justification for it. Here's Elijah Cummings.
We also now have evidence that President Trump's advisors began discussing citizenship questions long before the president took office. After his inauguration, the president discussed the idea with his top White House aides, Reince Priebus and Steve Bannon, who in turn pressed it with Secretary Ross. And although we have limited information about this scheme, we've been blocked from fully determining the real reason the administration sought to add the citizenship question.
We know the real reason. I mean, it's all there in those hard drives, and that has been admitted to the courts. So there's a lot of things going on here around this issue. One is the obstruction that the White House is involved in hiding this material. The other is whether the Supreme Court is actually going to take the fact that there's all this documentation that all but proves, in fact, I would say proves, that the reason why the DOJ asked for this information, this question to be in there, was part of a political program, not one by necessity. This is a constitutional requirement that they're infringing upon. And they are knowingly doing it, and there's documentation to prove it. Here's AOC at that same hearing.
I think that this is a debate about whether we should be asking who is a citizen or not in this country. The census is a constitutionally mandated operation that we are required to implement every 10 years. It is one of the most vital and sensitive things that we do in our government. Any change to the census, any addition of a question, usually takes 5 years of a process to make sure that it is vetted, that every word has been tested, to make sure that it is effective, because it is one of the most important things that we do. So it's not that I want to, this is not about whether or not I want to know who is a citizen in the United States or not. What I want to know is why this question was added, why 2 years have been shaved off of that 5-year process. I want to know why we have skipped every normal mandated procedure in testing how this question gets added in the census. I want to know why this question was magically added after we have seen that a political operative knew and detailed an intent to intimidate racial and immigrant communities for a partisan purpose, saying this will hurt Democrats and help Republicans. That's what I want to know. I want to know why Secretary Ross continued to meet with people of disturbing political affiliations after his own administration warned him to stop. He came right here and I asked him, did you continue speaking with him after this? He told me no, we had an email, and he did. He did. I want to know why people like Chris Kobach, with a documented history of overseeing effects. He has a resume of voter suppression techniques in the state of Kansas. I want to know why folks like that have their fingerprints all over the most sensitive census operations that we have as a United States government. This determines who is here. This determines who has power in the United States of America. That is what we want to know. I want to know about corruption. That's what I want to know about, the racism and the very disturbing history that we're seeing here. That's what I want to know. And so we gave the opportunity to ask. We asked, why are all of these things happening? Why is all of this connected? Why are there so many people, everyone from Steve Bannon to Chris Kobach, having their fingerprints and their political intent all over the United States Census? Why? And what did we get? Nothing.
So we'll hear about that vote today. It's a very important vote. And just the question of it right now, the invoking of the executive privilege, like I say, there's two major things that are happening here. One is what's going on in the House in terms of this. There's really more than two. There's the underlying question of the census and the implications of adding this question. There is the question as to whether there's going to be real consequences for the White House withholding these documents when they clearly have no reason to do so whatsoever. There's no executive privilege. There's no advice and consent that the president has in regard to the census that should be sensitive in any way if it is not politicized. And then with all this that's going on, this is going to be, if the Supreme Court rules that this question can stay in, I think it's going to be the inciting event that in the event we do see a Democrat control the presidency and the Democrats control both houses, you're going to see massive Supreme Court reform based on this very question. Because it would be unconscionable if they ignored this evidence that it was politically motivated.
God, props to Hoeffler's daughter. Like, can
Yes.
you imagine finding that info on your dead dad's computer? Like,
I think
secret census corruption plans?
I have a feeling, my understanding is that their relationship was strained, and I have a feeling it had stuff to do with his work. I mean, he was considered the architect of the gerrymandering. I mean, this guy was responsible for disenfranchising millions of voters. Millions and millions of voters, and immiserating a lot of people as a result.